random chunk from the archives.
Well, look who's here, Dan Brown, to talk to us about his new novel, already on pre-orders at #1 in the charts.
Wonderful.
Well, that's extraordinary. It's not even out yet.
I'm not sure what to say. I have a whole lot of fans here in the UK, and that's one of the reasons I'm here to say hi to them.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we'll do that in just a second. Right now, let's get a last quick look at what's happening where you are.
Stay with us. So not many authors can claim that their books are bestsellers before they're even published, but Dan Brown's eager fans pre-ordered so many copies of his latest thriller, Inferno, that it became an instant chart topper.
The book sees the return of the Harvard hero, Robert Langdon, who must prevent a deadly virus spreading across the world. Dan's here to tell us more about it. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, Robert Langdon, of course, we described him earlier as a fictional symbologist.
Yes, which I guess is a little redundant. I mean, symbologist is it's a fictional field. He would be a semiotician or a iconographer.
So symbology is a made-up discipline.
It's a made-up word to describe the discipline of iconography.
Yeah, but it's an important one, of course, and it's key to your books because they are sort of codes to be cracked, aren't they?
They are indeed. My fans love codes, and I grew up with codes and symbols. My dad was a big math guy, and I love codes.
And this one takes as its sort of guide to the code a very old book, Dante's Inferno, or the Divine Comedy by Dante. Just, you know, for those who, those of us who haven't
That's right,
read
who
it
haven't
all,
read it recently.
just to describe what that is and why that was the book that inspired you.
I have written a lot about the fine arts, but I'd never written about the literary arts. So Dante, on some level, called to me as something new and fresh and exciting. Dante's Inferno was the first part of the Divine Comedy, which was written in the 1300s by Dante Alighieri. It describes, it's an epic poem, I mean, enormous, 14,322 lines long, describing Dante's travels, his journey down through hell, through purgatory, and out into paradise. It interested me because I found out while writing Da Vinci Code that Dante is the one who really inspired our modern Christian vision of hell. You know, the Bible talks about hell ethereally. Greek mythology talks about it a little bit more specifically, but it wasn't until Dante that we had this amazing, vivid, codified, structured vision of hell.
So just tell it, because he describes certain levels of hell.
Yes.
I mean, it's pretty gruesome, isn't it?
Beyond pretty gruesome. It's awful.
So go through, if we go wrong in life, what does how does Dante describe these levels of hell that we're going to face?
It depends what you do wrong. That's the great thing about Inferno. He uses something called contrapasso, which means literally the opposite of what you did. Meaning, if you are, for example, a soothsayer in life, you sin by seeing the future. In hell, they put your head on backwards so you can only see behind you. The punishment always fits the crime.
Okay. Robert Langdon, then, at the beginning of Inferno, wakes up somewhere he wasn't expecting to be. One moment he's in Harvard, I think, and then he finds himself in Florence in a hospital room, which is all very confusing for him.
Right.
But the great thing about what you do is that presumably when you go and research, but you spend a lot of time in Florence to begin with.
I always pick places I want to go.
That's right, exactly.
I wrote one book, Deception Point, set at the Arctic Circle, and that was a mistake. So I learned, and I came back to Florence.
Sites in the Arctic Circle, shouldn't he?
So he has this extraordinary trip through Florence and other places as well, in the company of a rather lovely
She is
doctor.
lovely and interesting, quite bright.
Yeah, and it's a lovely look at, you know, Florence and how beautiful it is, and some of the secrets of Florence. There are big overarching themes as well that this book, I mean, you manage to sort of cover a lot of ground here. And it seems almost, when you get to one of the main themes of the book, which is, are there too many people in the world?
Yes.
It seems slightly at odds with the sort of story that you began to tell about Dante and about hell and about Florence.
Yes.
So is this something...
I'm always
What's
trying to
going on
take
here?
disparate themes and tie them together.
Right.
That's one of the things I love to do. That's what symbologists do. They look at symbols and they find connections. In the last 85 years, the population on planet Earth has tripled. We add 200,000 new people every day. Overpopulation is the issue of the future, the issue to which all of our other sort of environmental issues are keyed. So for me, to read Dante's Inferno, and to see that some of these levels of hell, where there are bodies writhing in hunger and pain and overcrowding, and have that really mimic and perhaps prophesy what's ahead for us, that's where I see the tie. And the villain in this novel sees Dante's Inferno not as history, but as prophecy.
Are we heading for hell because there are too many people on the
Well,
planet?
I mean, we're
Is that
starting to
what you're
see
saying?
some. Well, maybe. I mean, this is not an activist book, but I talk to a lot of activists, talk to a lot of futurists, scientists, and they're all very, very concerned about the rate of population growth.
There may be some people that you'd like to consign to hell who'd be the critics. Because here's a prophecy: any book you write is going to sell a gazillion copies, and is going to have a mixed reaction, to put it mildly, from the critics.
Mixed may be generous here in the UK.
I was trying to be diplomatic, but does that bother you?
You know what? I set out to write the book that I would want to read. When you're a creative person, whether you're an author, a painter, a musician, all you have is your own taste. So I set out to write a book that's to my taste, and then I just hope people share my taste.
And fortunately for you, it fits a lot of other people's tastes. So.
Apparently, a lot of people share my taste. They like to read the sorts of things that I like to read. You know, some of your critics here are not those people, apparently. So, you know, life goes on.
When you say some of your critics here, do you mean there's a specific issue with critics in the UK?
The books across my country and elsewhere in the world get much better reviews than they do here in the UK.
Really?
It seems sort of to be sport to kick me around a bit. So.
Yeah. You
Really?
are one of the very few people who actually get up at the same time of morning that we do. So rain or shine. I thought it maybe just when you're writing you get out of bed at 4 o'clock in the morning. But is it every single day?
It is every day. I got out of bed at 4 o'clock this morning. Yeah,
Which is great, but why?
Well, that was
why
jet
do you-
lag, but that,
But why do you do that on days that you're not?
well, I work pretty much every day. If I'm not writing, I'm researching or I'm reading. And trying to just, you know, fill my head with new ideas.
Do you find that those early hours of the morning are particularly a productive time for you?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, when you're up at 4 a.m., as you know, there's nobody to talk to. You're not getting email. The phone's not ringing. And for me, I think there's a very close tie between the dream state, when your mind is sort of creating things out of nothing, and the writing state, when your mind is creating something
dream
out of
plots? Do you get
Of course.
plots? Do you really?
Without a doubt. Absolutely.
And that's a sort of muscle, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
If your mind gets used to the idea and you get used to the idea of picking those ideas out of your
The
dreams.
subconscious is very, very powerful. And if I'm, usually before I fall asleep, I will think of the scene that I'm writing the next day. And maybe think of some of the challenges with it, what point of view to tell it from, what I'm going to conceal. And, you know, sometimes I'll wake up with a fresh outlook just because my
Notebook
subconscious...
by the bed?
Of course.
And is there part of this book, The Inferno, that you dreamt and woke up and scribbled down?
You know what's funny? I did, because I read so many different translations of the Inferno and became so involved in it, I did have some very unpleasant dreams. I mean, it's a terrifying landscape that Dante paints. And it's funny, the idea of having Langdon wakes up to a nightmare in the opening scenes of this novel. That came out of my waking up with a nightmare.
Yeah.
One thing you have been picked up by critics for is product placement. Now, which is always an interesting thing for authors because you've got to write about things that people believe in, but do you have to put the brand names in? So what is your view on that?
Yeah, I don't take product placement. I've been offered. I never take product placement. I mean, I love Apple
When you
Computer.
say you don't take it, you mean you don't take money for
No.
putting a brand name in your novel?
No.
Okay.
I feel like brand is such a part of our lives, and that it says something about a character or a scene to be specific. And I grew up learning to write in specifics. And oftentimes, a brand is as specific as you can get. And I just feel like it brings a level of reality
Well,
to the writing.
there's a certain tweed manufacturer who's very grateful to you for
Harris Tweed sends me a jacket every year. I love those guys. They make the finest jackets in the world. And
that. Which Susanna would say, other brands of tweed are also available.
Exactly.
It's been the BBC.
And just finally, you like to keep fit, you like to go running, you like to do other activities, takes you away from the desk.
Yes.
But do you still hang upside down when you get writer's block?
a lot has been made of me hanging upside down.
We like the idea of you hanging upside
well,
down.
apparently
to
a lot of
cure
people
writer's
do.
block.
I do. I hang upside down. I started a long time ago, writing Da Vinci
Blood
Code.
to the head. Does it?
It oxygenates your brain. It lets you see the world in a new way.
It
And
certainly
helps
does,
you cope with the
upside down.
critics.
Well, that too.
We should all try that. Okay, Dan, thanks very much.
Our pleasure.
The new book, Inferno, is out now.